And I remind you of that because in especially the Hindu religion, anything and everything can be a god. I was educated on that. It's unreal. Well, this week, and I don't want to be I don't want to be gross or anything, but just tell you what's going on. This week, many of the Hindu people are drinking cow urine in order to help cleanse the body of COVID. And as disgusting as that sounds, that's what you get with religion instead of a relationship. And today I want you to know that maybe things in our life doesn't sound that disgusting, but if we're not careful, see, religion can also be Christianity. It's according to what you're doing with it. And many people have made Christianity just another religion. And Christianity has never been designed. And Christianity, true Christianity, cannot be a religion. It has to be a relationship. If it's not a relationship, then it's not truly Christianity. If we start following a religion, then we'll find ourselves in the mess that we are in today. So I want you not only to be praying for India, but also that we begin to pray for ourselves. And I want to make this statement because sometimes I feel a little bad. I'm so hard on the Western Christianity. And sometimes we might take it the wrong way. Listen, I don't doubt you, the people of this church that I know well. I don't doubt your love for Christ. I do not doubt your dedication for Christ. And I don't consider any other Christian from any other country a better Christian. It's just the atmosphere is different, and they've had to rely on Christ in ways that we've never had to. We've never had to. Whether I was in Haiti, even when I was in Tijuana with some of the things I seen there, and of course in India, some of these people that are following Christ, it requires for them to have complete and utter trust for all their provisions. And most of us, we do not. We do not have to. And because of that, it's kind of fractured that relationship status that we should have with Christ. And I feel like I would almost be safe to say that would cover most every American Christian. Because the nature of the beast, if you need it and all you have to do is pick the phone up, if you get sick, you just get in the car and go to the doctor. Or if you get hot, you turn the air on. If you get cold, you turn the heat up. You know, if you get bored because you don't, or you say there's nothing to eat at the house when your cupboards are full, so you just get up and go to the restaurant. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but it's caused us to start relying more upon ourselves and in some cases other people. And today, because I think it will go right along with this lesson, we find a government that is truly trying to get you to rely on them with all these stimulus checks. I mean, just think about it. The reports came out this week that we had like a 6-point-something GDP growth. That's nonsense. That growth was brought on by stimulus checks. And if we're not careful, and they're not done, more than likely what we'll see now, if you have children, more than likely you will get $250 per child per month. And over the last year, I'm quite confident that no one has had to pay the first dime in child care. That the government's been paying, they're little by little, they're wanting you to depend upon them, and there's a reason for this. I titled this message on Who Will You Believe? Because we are fast approaching, and in some cases already there, we're going to have to decide who we are going to believe. Today I'm bringing the passage, a very familiar passage. I'm not going to read the entire event, but we get it from the book of Numbers, chapter 13 and chapter 14. But the event you will be very familiar with. It's the event where Moses has now, through the hand of the Lord, has now brought the children of Israel, have brought them out of Egypt, and they're now wandering around in the wilderness, desert, whatever you want to call it. And if my history serves me correct, by the time we get to this event, we're about 40 days into this event. Now, I want you to pay attention because I'm going to make some points with this that's going to be very relevant for you and I today. And I pray that you don't walk away offended, but you walk away saying, you know what? The pastor could be correct. He may be talking about me, and I may realize that a lot of my life, the things that I do that I call relationship is based on a religion instead of a relationship. And it's because maybe I'm not trusting Christ in a manner in which I should trust Him. So when you get to this event with Moses, and now he's getting ready to send 12 people to spy out the land. Now, let me paint a picture for you. When Joseph went and got his dad and all of his family, and he brought them down to Egypt, to the time that with Moses being delivered, we're in that neighborhood of around 400, maybe 430 years. So for many of those years, the Jewish people, they were as slaves working. And what was going on during this time was everything that they needed was being provided to them. It didn't matter if it was food, if it was shelter, whatever it may have been, they provided everything. Yes, if they got in trouble, they'd decrease the food amount, increase the workload, but still the man was providing everything to them. In this particular instance, it was the government providing everything that they need. Folks, I'm here to tell you, we in America are so close to everything that many people need in America is being provided for them by the government. And it's not because the government loves you, it's because the government does have an agenda. You can call me a conspiracy theorist if you want to. It does not matter to me. I've already read the reports. I'm a student of the UN 20 agenda. I'm a student of the UN 30 agenda. I realize what's going on, and I will tell you something. We are in fast motion, and we've got a president that's being nothing but the puppet of the UN right now. It's unreal what's in the making to get passed in legislation here in America to get us in line with the UN 30 agenda. You can actually read some of these things. By the way, if some of this goes through, you will be going against the law if you eat more than 1 pound of beef. No, 4 pounds of beef in a year. That is one burger, maybe a month. You think I'm crazy? That sounds crazy, doesn't it? So does drinking cow urine. We better wake up and see what's going on around us. We don't live in the same country any longer. And we're being bombarded with so many things. But here's the deal. They're smart enough to realize that we're not just going to follow them, but if we can get where we're dependent upon them, whatever they tell us we will do or face the consequences of being cut off. So you have the Jewish people, and here now they begin to say, leaving Egypt is a good thing. We want to go to that land that's flowing with milk and honey that's been promised to us all these years. We heard Moses and we heard Miriam sing the songs about this land that the Lord says, as an inheritance I will give to you. The land will be yours. So they leave, somewhere between 2 to 6 million people leave Egypt, headed to the wilderness. And by about the 40th day, I'm not talking about years, I'm talking about days. Just a few days, Moses says, there is the land. Right there it is. And every one of them looked and said, that's it. That's the land that the Lord told us about. The land flowing with milk and honey. Grapes more than you could ever eat. I mean, it was paradise here on earth. They recognized it for what it was. So Moses sent 12 people out there to go and look and see what they were going to have to do to be able to cross over into the land flowing with milk and honey that they knew to be the promised land. Well, these 12 went and spied it out. They seen the same thing. They watched the same thing. They looked at the same thing. They came out of the same mess in Egypt. They had witnessed all the same things that each one. They all knew what the other was thinking and what they were looking at. 10 of them came back and said, we can't go. Crushed the people. They said, why can't we go? Because they are giants and we are grasshoppers. We can't go. There's no way we can do this. They had just forgotten about what God did for them just a few days earlier, getting them out of Egypt. They forgot what God did to the Egyptian people because they refused to let them go with all the plagues. They forgot how God would send a plague, and by the time it would reach their camp, it would be stayed and not affect the people. All of that was forgotten. They came back with the report. Even though that they knew and God had reminded them time and time and time again that you will possess the land. I will give you the land. It's going to be an inheritance. And he said, not only am I going to do that, but I have set you apart from all the other nations. The other nations are going to be jealous of you. They're giants and we're grasshoppers. We can't do it. You might say, well, Pastor, what's that have to do with today? Let me tell you. If the government decides to stop the free ticket, and they will, then you're going to have a choice. Actually, there's many people that I've been following for years that I respect highly, and that's in the legal part, but they're Christian people and Christian groups in the legal parts of what's going on in the nation. And I've been reading reports this past week. Something that I've been preaching here and reminding you of for quite some time. And now they're telling you, get ready, be prepared, that because you are about to have to be a lawbreaker. That doesn't sound like a Christian to me, does it to you? But it says you better get ready because you're going to have to be a lawbreaker if you are going to be a true follower of Jesus Christ. You're going to have to break the law. You might say, well, Pastor, well, we're going to have to break the law. I'm not going to explain it. I'm not going into it. All you need to do is read the Equality Act that everybody is quite sure is going to pass. And soon as it does, then for me to stand up and preach the messages that I preach, I will have to break that law. And I'm here to tell you, if they want to come, they're just going to have to come. And I know this thing is being taped, but I'll just tell you right now, I will be breaking that law. Because we have a greater law that we must follow, and that is God's law. And that supersedes any man's law. We cannot succumb to these things, that these moral laws that God has demanded us to uphold. We must uphold these. But if you're not careful, you will give in. How do I know? Because we already have. We already have. And do you know why we have and we don't even know we have? It's because we've allowed them to redefine what church is. Nothing wrong with the way we have church. But at some point in time they said you can't pray at school anymore. And then you can't pray at a ball game. You can't pray at any public building. You can't go. You can't do this, and now they're getting where you can't even do the Pledge of Allegiance. And if you do, they want you to leave out under God. So the IRS for several years has been dictating the message of the Bible and of the Christian people. They said you can't do this and you can't do that. But what we'll let you do, we'll let you come into this building and you can sit and you can preach and you can sing and you can have fellowship in this building. But when you go out, there's going to be some restrictions upon you. And I'm going to tell you, by the way, because I am a student of American history and I am a student of our Constitution. And our Constitution, especially the First Amendment, when it talks about religion, that's talking about the state should never infringe upon the people when it comes to that. But the people has every right to speak on behalf of the state the things of God. All you have to do is do a little history and get into the minds of the forefathers. But what did we do? We said, okay, so we'll come into a building. And that's what we did. We came into a building. And so we got a little concerned about being in a building, because now it's hard to go outside the building and do what we really need to do unless we want to sneak around and do it privately. I was in the restaurant the other day. Actually, Nathan was with me. Don't be surprised, because already in some places in America, what I did there, if I did it at the wrong time of year, they would put me in jail. Because I struck up a conversation with the guy that was going to be leading to the things of God. Now, if I would have done that in Dearborn, Michigan, whenever they're having their Muslim event up there, they would put me in jail for doing that. How do I know? Because they've already done it to people up there. By the way, Dearborn, Michigan is inside the United States of America. So we let them redefine the church. Now they're coming in telling you what you're allowed to say in the church. That's why people get upset and nervous. Oh, that pastor down there is political. He's not supposed to say things like that in the church. Really? Really? I'm not supposed to say anything that has any connection to anything political? Like Joe Biden is probably going to be the sorriest president we've ever had? And it's not because I'm so much against Joe Biden, but I'm telling you, he is a puppet for the UN agenda. And the UN agenda it does go against everything that we as Christians are going to have to stand for. But in the 80s, we let them redefine the responsibility of the church. And if you've not been here very long, you're going to get offended by what I'm about to say. Because what they said was the purpose of the church was to bring people in and get them saved. Wrong. Ooh. Really? That is not the purpose of the church. Is it okay for people to get saved in church? Well, sure it is. But the purpose of the church, people say, well, it's where we come to worship God. No, we worship God every day, wherever we are at. That is a purpose that we should have 24/7. That's not scheduled for Sunday morning or when we decide we're going to assemble together. The purpose of the church, we find it in Matthew 28. It said, "Go ye therefore, baptizing them in the name of the Father and Son." And what else did He tell us to do? Make disciples. The church is where we come and we educate people of the things of God, and then we get up as the church and we disperse to win the world. Not happening, because now we bought into that. If I can just get them to church. It's not working. You know why it's not working? That's not the design. But we bought into it. We had to buy into it. Why did we buy into it? Because we started pushing and pulling a little bit away from God. So we had to come up with some type of man-made theology or doctrine or explanation on why we're doing what we're doing and the best way to do it. And now we're just full blown. It doesn't matter what's going on in our life. God is the last one we ever look to. And many times, even when we look to Him, we're not expecting Him to do anything anyway. Might as well say amen. Because I know I'm not the only one who does this. See, these 10 that came back, they said the land is good, but, flowing with milk and honey, just like the song said, but it's going to be a nice place to move to, but the task is too great. They're way too strong for us. We could never win. We just can't do it. There is no way that I can stand if it means my job. And I'll be honest with you, I feel sorry for the working class today, the working age. I do. Because there's a good chance if you stand for the things of God, it may cost you your job. I've already talked to my daughter in the school system, and I'm pretty sure that if they start trying to force certain things on her, she's coming home. She's already made that decision, that plan. See, growing up in my house, you're taught to make plans if things happen and have that plan ready. Don't be reactive. Because if you'll do that, it won't seem as hard. In Numbers 13, listen, and I'll read from the 10 says, "We can't attack those people. They're stronger than we. We seem as grasshoppers in our own eyes." We seem as grasshoppers in our own eyes. Forgot all about the things that God had done. They seen the promised land and they said it's too difficult. And I'm going to tell you that decision cost a generation the promised land. Every adult alive at that point was dead besides the other two before they went into the promised land, was not allowed to enter, including Moses. So you had Joshua and Caleb. See, they came back with a different report. This is what Caleb had to say. We've all heard about Joshua. There's a book in the Bible written about him. But we don't know much about Caleb. But this is what Caleb said. We should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it. Do not be afraid of the people of the land. Because you know what he said? We will swallow them up. That's my kind of guy. That's the guy I want to go to war with. That's the one that I want to stand with when he's standing for the things of God. I don't want this little wimpy Christian over there that's going to cry every time there's a problem. I want someone to say that I serve a God that's greater than any problem that I have to face. And that we can swallow. Can you imagine? See, we can't get our minds around that. Because we've never had to. We've never had to do it. What was it that caused Joshua and Caleb to come back with the positive report? Well, I will tell you, it's the same thing that caused them to come back to a negative report. Joshua and Caleb, they had faith. They remembered the promises of God and they believed it. The other 10, they may have remembered, but they did not believe. What do you believe? Do you believe it? See, Joshua and Caleb remembered Moses and Miriam. Remember their song? It went something like this: "The Lord is my strength and my song, and has become my salvation. In your unfailing love you will lead the people you have redeemed. In your strength you will guide them to your holy dwelling. The nations will hear and will tremble." That's what they remembered about God. What do you remember? Listen, I'm not saying that we need to act like a third world country. But we better learn how to develop a relationship with Christ that we're trusting Him so much that we're placing our life in His hands, and no matter what the answer is going to be, we're just going to have to accept that's what God has for us. In service in India, you know, in India they've got things called cobras. I'm not talking about a Mustang cobra. I'm talking about one of them big old cobra snakes. I'm out there like a fool walking around out in the field, and they're yelling at me, "There's cobras out there." And I'm yelling back, "I don't understand your language." And finally I got the gist of it, and I got out of there. I didn't get to witness it, but they were telling me. Rushed a person in the church service, been bit with a cobra. Moses was preaching. Hope I get the story right. And the first thing he does is he begins to talk to the Lord silently. Because God's going to have to show up, heal this man or this woman, or these people are not going to buy into this. This is Christ's thing. They began to pray for this woman, and she stayed there in the service, and by the time the service was over, this woman was fine. You know, and we need to go to the doctor, but I'm going to tell you something. I fear that if something terrible was to happen to us and we don't have a way of getting to the hospital or to a doctor, we're going to lose it. See, there was a stark difference between those 2 and those 10 that were together, seeing everything the same. Today, you have so many calling themselves Christians that are definitely giving different reports. Who are you going to believe? I mean, you've not only got Christianity, but we've got a government that is wanting us to believe and to trust and to depend upon them. And we know that if they ever get their grips tight enough, then they will accomplish the very things that they tried to do in Houston, Texas a few years ago by demanding the manuscripts and the notes from the pastor that stood up and taught against homosexuality. Who are you going to believe? A message of confidence and hope. And maybe you don't view a message like I'm preaching as confidence and hope. I personally do. Because I'm going to tell you, my confidence and my hope is not in the stuff I have. Maybe your confidence and hope is in the stock market. Well, anybody that does 10 minutes of research will tell you that's a fool's market. Yeah, they're making some good money in it. But that market is being propped up by the Federal Reserve, which is not part of the federal government. That is a private organization, probably of about 10 people that dictate what you can and cannot do with your money. And they are pumping billions and billions of dollars every month, sometimes every 2 weeks, to keep this government propped up. Even through the report of a 6+ quarter GDP growth, they still come out and said we cannot stop pumping the money in because we still believe the country cannot stand on its own. Do you realize that they called those notes in, those treasury notes, and these people have to pay this, all this money pumped in, that our economy will bankrupt overnight? Well, my confidence is in my silver and my gold. Really? It wasn't a few years ago they banned gold. And if we believe the Bible, and I do, and I believe that we're living in the last days, and I truly believe that we're near enough that man called the Antichrist is probably walking the earth today, and for him to be able to do exactly what the Bible says, then all fiat money's got to go. It's got to go. Gold, silver, dollars, the euro, the won, the ruble, all of it. All of it's got to go. No fiat money. Nothing that I can take that's tangible and hand to you. So you say, well, I trust in the crypto. Well, I'm going to tell you, the cryptocurrency right now, 99.9% of it is decentralized. That means the government can't touch it. That's going to have to stop at some point. That's why we're going to digital dollars. So it's all going, you might say, well, I'm trusting in my job. I'm trusting in my family. I'm trusting in this. I'm here to tell you, your trust better get out of all of this stuff, and it better be focused here on Christ. Because if not, you're going to justify why you'll do what you'll do. And they'll have some good reasons why you're going to do it. Oh, you don't have to believe that Bible. That doesn't mean... Folks, there are people out here already saying you can take the mark of the beast. That doesn't mean anything. I mean, you've got people standing up in pulpits that says, I will never preach out of this. And his churches are overflowing. Who are you going to believe? Folks, if the way that we've been doing it works, Fentress County should be a land flowing with milk and honey, not drugs. The last time, I believe, there's somewhere between 95 and 105 churches in Fentress County with a population of 18,000 people. And the drugs have taken over this county. Good people. And the church is meeting, but They're not relevant to a community any longer. Why? Because we've been told to stay inside, and when we go out, we must be careful. So we have conditioned ourselves not to even talk about the things of God when we leave here. How much have you talked about the things of God last week to other people? That's a real question that you need to answer. I'm not talking about you're trying to go out here and save somebody. Great at that, but you should at least be talking about people about what's going on and Christian or not, and helping them prepare and show them how to get ready and let them know what's going on. But in the middle of that, see, you can offer them hope that comes through Christ. But if we've got 100 churches in this county, can you imagine if we had never stopped? If we had never stopped doing things outside of the four walls, then could you imagine the communities that would be reached today? Could you imagine in Fentress County? We may have 100 churches, but if we would learn to be the church, we might have 200 churches. Because we'd realize this is just a point where we come in and we start learning and we're making disciples. Either we're being made a disciple or we're helping to teach someone and make them a disciple. Remember Paul tells us that at some point in time you should also be teaching. Who are you teaching? See, it's easy to stand and say, well, I'm going to choose God. But when we start asking these questions, I'm telling you, if you're not choosing God and they come to you and say, you do this or you lose your job, you will do it. You do this or we cut the check off and you no longer can get any food, you can't walk in the grocery store, then you'll do whatever they tell you to do. We can sit here and say that we won't, but if we're not being invested and involved right now, don't take that chance. Look at the lessons that are not being taught, the truth that's no longer being taught. The fellowship that's not shared. Now, I can say that word fellowship, and I know where your mind goes, food. Amen. That's where we go, food. We're going to have fellowship. That's why some people that don't care for it say, well, I don't have to go, I'll eat at home. I understand. Because we have fellowship, my wife usually heads it up and she finds enough people and we have enough food and we come and eat. And after we eat, we go home. And we call that fellowship. If you read the book of Acts, chapter 2, by the time you get to the end of it, you go through a whole list of characteristics of a church, and one of them is called fellowship, but it's not talking about fellowship where we just get together and eat and talk about the weather. See, I went to India and we were going to have what I call fellowship. They didn't call it fellowship. I don't know what they called it. I couldn't understand it. But anyway, I knew we were going. And I went and I get me a banana leaf and I'm getting my food together. And by the time I get ready to eat, so they come tell me, said, you ready to preach? Didn't know I was supposed to preach. So guess who didn't have a sermon prepared to preach? Thank God that He looks over our ignorance. I stood up and preached for an hour and sat down, and that wasn't enough. By the time I left India, I was preaching sermons 2.5 hours long, so I can do that. You won't stay. I wouldn't either. See, it's not, I'm not trying to compare because it's not apples to apples. In places like India, in places like, hey, listen, we can talk about bad things that's going on here that wouldn't even bother a Haitian. Not one moment. Whenever I would see those Haitians take mud pies and make a mud pie and eat that thing so they'd have something in their belly. Or I would go to the market. They had market twice a week, I think on Tuesday and then again on Thursday. And it's 100 degrees out there. And no refrigeration, by the way. And here you got a man with a goat that will sell you a goat. So you buy a goat and you take it from here to here. This man will kill the goat. And then you go from there to there, and that man will slaughter it and sell the meat. If that's what you're wanting to do, is sell the meat. So that meat sits out there all day long in 100 degrees weather, and what doesn't sell, they take it home and don't put it in the refrigerator. They take it home and bring it back on Thursday and sell what's left. Now I watched it all the time. When I go to Haiti, I have to order my food to be sent over ahead of time. Not because I'm better than the Haitians, it's because I cannot eat their food. I will die if I do. They got bellies this big because they're full of worms. And the water that is safe for me to drink is so it stinks to high heaven. It's all I can do just to take a sip. So I take some type of flavoring so that I can at least drink the water. I take a shower in the water they take a shower with, and I feel nasty. And do you know when they start coming to church? Because they don't have a lot of them don't have clocks and watches, or didn't when I was there last. The village I was in. When they hear the saints, they know it's time to gather. And they come for a time of praise and worship, and to hear the Word of God. They don't get enough of it. Folks, let me tell you, that's a hunger and a thirst for something that, if we're not careful, we are missing. So who are you going to believe? Are you going to believe a government that tells you we know what's best? Gary, you want to raise cows? If all this goes through, you raise them till they die. You cannot sell them to eat them. You raise them till they die. Natural death. This you can't make this stuff up. And here we have Christians planted right in the middle of this mess. And our message cannot change. Our stand must not change. We must stand with the Word of God no matter what it costs us.